Uhuru comrades, and welcome to today's Omali Taught Me Sunday study, live with the leader of the African nation, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. The theme of our discussion is Build and Consolidate the African People's Socialist Party, Part 2. Chairman Omali Yeshitela will guide us through this document starting on page 14. The PDF is accessible via link in the description. This pamphlet was published in 1986 with portions appearing in the Burning Spear newspaper. Comrades, the time to study and understand these critical questions is right now. We must grasp our own significance as members or supporters of the African People's Socialist Party, the broader Uhuru movement, and the worldwide anti-colonial struggle that's unfolding. We'll start with the reading from the chairman, then break for announcements before going into question and answers. Last thing before we start, make sure you're hitting that like, that follow, subscribe, and/or share button to do your part in getting the word out about today's study. I am honored now to introduce the founder of the African People's Socialist Party, the leader of the African nation and the worldwide African Revolution, Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Uhuru, Chairman.
I want to thank you, Comrade Director, for the introduction and for hosting this study today and every Sunday. And I would like to just call on everybody to share, to like. Let's get as large an audience as possible for us to get. Again, we are dealing with the issue of building and consolidating the African People's Socialist Party. I'd like to give a bit of background just in terms of why it is that we would be committed to this study. And I know that most people who have some reference to the Black Revolution, the reference is what was seen in the 1960s, the high tide of the 1960s for many people in terms of the revolutionary activity of our community, of our people, was like the Black Panther Party here in the United States. And other places around the world, we saw expressions often of armed struggle, mass resistance to colonial terror, to the ongoing colonial terror that's experienced by Africans and other people. Similarly, around the world, people were also involved in struggling against the colonial conditions that's been imposed on Africa, African people in the world since for the last 600 years or so. In the 1960s, there was a high tide of revolution and resistance by people all around the world. In the United States, we saw the movement from general struggle for democratic rights, democratic space, that was called the Civil Rights Movement. The Civil Rights Movement was not an effort by African people to seize power, to take control of our own lives, to become a self-governing people. The Civil Rights Movement was a movement for democracy within the existing setup that we experienced within the colonial system itself. There was an assumption of the Civil Rights Movement that somehow freedom could be attained within the system that came into being by enslaving African people through. And so we had this movement, and it was a movement that, of course, itself was born in terms of conscious activity about African people subsequent to the defeat of the efforts by Marcus Garvey to move African people outside of this system to build our own capacity for self-government, to take Africa and to become an independent, liberated people, which is and a dignified people through that process. But the Garvey movement was crushed with the assistance of different sectors of the African petty bourgeoisie, of course, the federal government, and even many so-called leftists or communists participated in the assault on the Garvey movement. The whole notion of African self-determination, Black people being free, controlling our own lives, is something that many people could not even grasp or contend with. And those who did understand it hated the idea so much that they worked to make sure that it never happened. So the Garvey movement was crushed. And the Garvey movement was a movement it was a movement that actually had its own goals, had defined freedom for us. And with the defeat of the Garvey movement, our movement took a defensive posture then. And so you saw not a struggle to try and take our power, which is a normal, natural thing that any enslaved and colonized people want to do, but to find a space, a better place within the colonial system that had been set up at our expense. This was the civil rights movement. And as heroic as many people were within the civil rights movement, the movement itself was defensive in the sense that, unlike the Garvey movement, it was not a movement that thrust itself forward for the purpose of taking our power. It was a movement to try to survive and better our situation within the existing social system. And as a consequence of this movement, this incredible movement, the civil rights movement, we saw heroic figures did emerge. Ella Baker, an extraordinary leader, people like Fannie Lou Hamer, people even like Martin Luther King and others, ordinary people were engaged in serious kinds of struggle. As a part of this process of struggle, the movement developed from one of simply being defensive and trying to operate within the system toward independence from the system, using the system itself in many instances to try to forward our struggle. And of course, as many people know, the struggle by our people to change our situation in the world resulted in the people ourselves being changed. Revolutionary movement came from that. It came spontaneously. It was a logical consequence of an oppressive system beating down, crushing the people, telling the people, informing the people that our only future was forever to be servants. Our children will be servants and humiliated, subject to violence by the state, violence by white people, by the colonizer. And this was what had been imposed on us. And so we saw this radical development. And it was reflected intellectually in terms of our intellectuals began to come to radical conclusions and express those radical conclusions, and our movements began to achieve more radicalism and more started moving toward independence. And reflections of that, of course, in recent history was in 1965, after the 1964 Mississippi Freedom Summer Project, where African people in the United States trying to win freedom through the electoral process had come to conclude that it was, and that was the Democratic Party was the instrument that we tried to use, despite the fact that the Democrats were killing us, bombing us, assassinating us throughout the South in particular, and denying us rights and freedoms in other places. But the Democratic Party was seen as the vehicle through which we would achieve this freedom. 1964, this amazing kind of experiment occurred under the leadership primarily, not exclusively, but the leading role was played by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and there were others, the Congress of Racial Equality, what came to be the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. All of them played some role in this movement forward for democracy and helped to push forward history in a way that actually we saw a greater radicalization. But the highest expression of this struggle for freedom, actually, as we've always said, is self-determination. And there were sectors of the movement that actually fought for self-determination rather effectively to some extent. And we saw that with the rise of JOMO, the Hunter Militant Organizations, one of the co-founders of the African People's Socialist Party. We saw that with the rise of the Black Panther Party, which was the most influential of all these organizations, but each one of them, what we are talking about, was born out of spontaneous struggle by the masses of the people. Unlike then, where we had no political party that was actually capable of saying and developing tactics and strategy, having a theory that informed our practice so that we would move toward the actual capture of political power, the actual unification of African people for the purpose of capturing and wielding political power. This was not something that happened. It was not a revolutionary party that kicked off the civil rights movement. It was not the revolutionary party that defined how we should be moving forward. And so the revolution that actually occurred in the 1960s, particularly as it made itself manifest in the United States, and that's generally true in various other places, never it was something that had any kind of coordination or organizational capacity. And so when it was crushed, this movement was crushed, it did so before certain kinds of ideological and political struggles that was happening within the African world, within the African community itself, had reached some satisfactory conclusion. And so our movement was killed, people were assassinated and things like that. And then because the objective of the colonial state was to actually destroy the will of the people and the organizational capacity of the people, the leadership of the people to achieve self-determination and self-government, it left in place and promoted forces and that would have us on a perpetual, involved in a perpetual process to improve our situation within the existing setup. And so what we're saying is that we have to have struggle. We have to have freedom. We have to have independence. Garvey said that and understood it. Malcolm said that and understood it. And Nkrumah and Lumumba said these things and understood it, but we never had the organizational capacity nor the theoretical leadership that really informed us where we were going to go, subsequent to the defeat of the movement by Marcus Garvey. So we're having this discussion today because the defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s occurred before many of these ideological issues could be resolved, and left in the place and the ashes of our defeat were simply the aspirations of the African petty bourgeoisie and white liberals and the colonial ruling class itself, the definition it had imposed on what our struggle was about. But we've always known that the issue was the struggle for power, for political power. And to do that, we had to have our own political party. And our own political party had to have the capacity to actually move from this place where we are located now, from that place where we were left in the 1960s with the defeat of our revolution, to a revolutionary conclusion. And that revolutionary conclusion looks like it is the absolute liberation of every square inch of Africa, the unification of Africa and African people, and the siege of and the exercise of political power. That's what it's about. That's why we talk about political parties. That's why we're having this discussion now about building and consolidating the party, building and consolidating an actual capacity to take power. And making this something that's not just that we do to get likes on social media, to get friends on social media, but to actual have an actual capacity to seize and then to exercise political power. And the fact is that we understand that it's the African working class that has to be centered to this, because this is where all of the value comes from. The value comes from human labor. And the problem is that the system that was born from colonialism that is now people recognize as capitalist thing is not something that permits for the working people who produce the value collectively to enjoy collective leadership over our own lives and our own resources. So that's why we're talking about the party. And this is more complicated or complex, I should say, than just having a protest, just having a demonstration. We had reached a place where the movement is everything and the revolution is nothing. Revolution is not something that automatically is conferred upon the people. Revolution requires leadership by revolutionaries. Revolutionaries function within revolutionary organizations for the purpose of pursuing total freedom, and being able to exercise that. Revolution gives us an opportunity to define freedom as more than just being able to wear cornrows on the job or to do some other kinds of things that the white person will find tolerable. It is about the pursuit of power. It's about the pursuit of self-government, about the pursuit of dignity and an end to the humiliation of a whole nation of people that spans the globe. That's what this revolution is about. And so we need a political party to do that. A political party that connects the people around the world in a common pursuit of a new world, of a new freedom. And so that's what it is we're looking at. And I'm hoping that we can have a quality discussion based on what we will be talking about now. I want to express appreciation to all of you who I know engaged in group studies. That is particularly true on the continent of Africa. I know we're doing that in Southern Africa, South Africa, as they refer to it. I know we're doing that in some places in West Africa, Sierra Leone, possibly in Ghana and other places as well. And so the group studies, I think, are really important. And I'm encouraging the group studies to happen everywhere we are located in the world. To the extent it's possible to do group studies. And if we can't do a group study while it's live, then we can capture this video, and then we can have collective studies later through the video, giving people an opportunity to discuss the issues and questions that's being talked about here. I want to say that I'm calling on everyone to engage in actual study, that so we have to build a revolution. And all of you who are out there who are not a part of the African People's Socialist Party need to come up with an explanation of why. Because the fact is that that party was created for the purpose of capturing political power, winning our freedom. And that's what it's about. And it's not the easiest thing in the world, in the sense that there are certain requirements for being a revolutionary party that we have talked about and will continue to talk about moving forward. So I'm on page 14. And I'll begin to read now. So we say this is a continuation. So we say because the Black working class suffered such a serious and total defeat during the Black Revolution of the 1960s, most of the remaining or existing Black organizations have been organizations of various representatives and sectors of the Black petty bourgeoisie. However, the African People's Socialist Party was born of at least one organization that survived the 60s and had an uninterrupted history developing from the 60s despite the general defeat of the Black Revolution. Hence, we were able to develop upon the advances of our revolution of the 60s and to become a revolutionary party of the Black working class in actual composition as well as in ideology. The defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s meant that the Black petty bourgeoisie, as well as the Black working class, would lose confidence in the ability of the Black working class to lead our revolution to a successful conclusion. Thus, many organizations, some of which were extremely radical, were built to serve the needs and aspirations of the Black petty bourgeoisie. But few elements of the Black petty bourgeoisie were willing to peel away from the Black petty bourgeoisie and join with the revolutionary Black working class party. I've known some of them. They were quite radical and in many ways really brilliant, but they were not able to commit class suicide. That is to say, to peel away from the aspirations and the interests of the petty bourgeoisie and join with the interests of the working class. And the African working class is the most subjected to the cruelest and most brutal relationship that's impossible to have with capitalism as it's known. Of course, we know it's colonialism that is the real face of what people refer to as capitalist existence. So, so we say until now. When the party has proved itself over and over again, even to the satisfaction of our enemies, and even as the petty bourgeois organizations have finally succeeded in demonstrating their extreme limitations and, in some instances, their bankruptcy. The new elements coming into the party will bring their many skills with them. This is 1986, I think it was. They will also bring with them their experiences within petty bourgeois organizations, their one-sided development that is generally devoid of practice, and sometimes, due to the nature of their development, some contempt for the Black working class. Sometimes people refer to practice as just going to a protest demonstration, and protest is good, but that's not the practice we are talking about. The responsibility of the revolutionaries is to solve the problems of the revolution. And they are much more complex than a demonstration. There's much more involved in what happened than the particular cop that shot an African, that killed or brutally murdered George Floyd. There's much more involved than that. And we have to have tactics and strategy based on a theory that gets to the essence of the question. So the outcome is not simply to get some time for a cop, but to overturn this relationship so there won't be any more George Floyds. And the humiliation, it's not just that George Floyd was killed, which is bad. It's also the humiliation of the whole nation of African people to see this white man who descends from these forces who kidnapped, captured us, brutalized us, stole our labor and everything, and still, had us in chains. See this white man kill us, and with his knee in this man's neck, in this horrible way, and let him, and on his knee, grinning smirking as he's killing this man. This is just basic humiliation. This is the statement that this white man, this colonizer, was making to every African and every other human being on earth. And just to say Black Lives Matter doesn't respond to it, because Black lives do not matter to the colonizer. And the only time Black lives will matter is when Black lives are in the hands, in the possession of what? Black people. And the only way that happens is to overturn the system that oppresses and kills and humiliates us. Do you remember the brother who they killed in New York? You remember who they choked to death in broad daylight, and how they were pushing his head into the cement? This is humiliation. Yes, he's dead. Yes, it's terror that's inflicted on us. Look at what they did to Mike Brown. They killed him and then leave him on 100-degree plus asphalt for 4.5 hours to just rot there. It's not just death, it's humiliation in addition to the terror that they are imposing on the whole people. That has to end. We cannot tolerate that. We have to really become organized and be a part of a mobilization, an organization, a formation that is determined that African people should be free. Africa should be free, and we don't have to live like this anymore. Look at what they did to Lumumba. Look at what they did to Lumumba. And so it's more than just killing us. It's humiliating the whole nation. It's a nation of people who they've named. They gave us names for themselves. They named us after what they wanted us to be. We have to take that back, and we have to be organized to make that happen. That's why there has to be an organization of forces who are dedicated to that end. Everybody can't do it, we know that, but everybody can support it. Any person who lives in the African community recognizes that you can't go by what the system sets up. You have to find ways to get around it. And so you can't come into the party if you don't have the courage to come into the party, the discipline to come into the party and what have you, then you find a way that you support the party, etc. It's your party. That's what you have to be able to recognize. And you also need to be feeling guilty if you're not a member of this party that's for the last 50 years, consistently dealing with it, not just protests, but consistently creating the new world that African people that have to have, and the whole world, peoples of the world will have to have in order to enjoy anything that looks like approximate freedom. So it's this is one of the reasons building and consolidating a party is such an urgent task at this moment. This is one of the reasons theoretical development and organizational training for our cadre is such an urgent task for our party at this moment. And this is a critical moment. You can see it. This is the thing that I'm talking about. You can see it. You just have to be able to interpret it, and the party will help you interpret what it is that you're looking at. You can see all around the world, peoples are resisting and turning this system around, and you can see white power in its death throes. Now it's contending with China. It's contending with Russia. It's contending with Venezuela. It's contending with oppressed peoples all around the world, and it's contending with African people in North St. Louis. It's contending with African people globally. It's experiencing death throes. You can see it. And so the thing is whether we would take advantage of this moment. That's the significance of the party. That's the significance of being able to have this study and this discussion with you to recognize this critical moment in history and what it is that we have to do. So for while building for the Second Party Congress, this was prior to our Second Party Congress. While building for the Second Party Congress, we must bring the best of these new brothers and sisters along with the hundreds of ordinary Black workers into the party. And now we're talking about the 8th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party scheduled to be held in South Africa, occupied Tanzania. We are not exactly on time for that. We're not exactly on time for that, but that's where we're going. But in order to protect and develop the revolutionary essence of the party, we must be capable of representing the party correctly. Otherwise, we will make many errors, and our party's strength will become, which led new sectors to us, will become our weaknesses in the face of the inability and inexperience and poorly trained cadre to uphold them. To paraphrase former Black Panther leader Huey P. Newton, when he was a revolutionary during the Black Revolution of the 60s, quote, "The party must be the ox upon whose back the masses ride." And much earlier, two 19th century European revolutionaries, Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, authored a similar statement in this quote: "The communists, therefore, are on the one hand practically the most advanced and resolute section of the working class parties of every country. That sector which pushes forward all others. On the other hand, that sector which pushes forward all others." You know, in the African People's Socialist Party, you know what I'm talking about because you see it happening. That sector which pushes forward all others. You see imitations, you see people who learn from what we do and are moved and act because of what it is that we do. That sector, that's who we are. On the other hand, theoretically, they're talking about the communists. This is Marx and Engels, which is us. Theoretically, they have over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions and ultimate general results of the proletarian movement. They have a to what end that they're fighting for. It was left to V.I. Lenin, the 20th century Russian revolutionary, to successfully build and lead the revolutionary organization spoken of by Marx, Engels, and later Newton. Having declared, quote, "Give us an organization of revolutionaries and we will overturn Russia." Give us an organization of revolutionaries. Give us an organization of revolutionaries and we will overturn Russia. Lenin set upon the task to build the revolutionary organization that overturned Russia and became the prototype for revolutionary organizations of the oppressed and exploited peoples throughout the world. Give us an organization of revolutionaries and we will overturn Russia. He didn't say, give us a mass protest movement against police killing or something like that. Give us an organization of revolutionaries, which is what we have been fighting for the last 50 years. We have been developing for the last 50 years, which is what we are talking about now, doing a study based on a pamphlet and training that from 1986. Give us an organization of revolutionaries. That's what we are fighting for. An organization of revolutionaries. Such a part is different from the parties which have existed before and which were generally in the service of oppressor and exploiting classes, notwithstanding the limited and occasional membership of the oppressed peoples and exploited classes, such as the party of the vanguard, the advanced detachment of the working class. It is a party of communists, a party of a new type. Such a party is the African People's Socialist Party. Our task is to unite our people under the leadership of the Black working class, to unite our people under the leadership of the Black working class in the struggle for political independence, African liberation, and socialism. The party is the non-dogmatic and non-compromising anti-opportunist political leader of our people and class in their struggle for power. It is the responsibility of the party to direct all the energies and forces of the masses toward the building of a new world. A new world. That's what it's about. That's what Black Power Blueprint that we look at in creating the economic institutions, part of not trying to coexist. It says dual and contending power is what we're fighting for. The contention is the process of building a new world. That's what it is we're fighting for. When we say the party is the vanguard or the advanced attachment of the colonized African working class, this must not be confused with the idea that the party and the working class are the same. There used to be people who were in the party who call themselves like being the working class, and they would wear coveralls and boots that were unlaced and traipse around. This was their verge. This is the petty bourgeoisie who's caricaturized what the African working class is. Working class ain't never been like that. Nowhere. I don't care where you are. Working class ain't never been. All you got to do is go to any African community in the world and see Africans getting ready to go to church, or Africans doing any other camp. You don't see Africans running around like that. And even if Africans were like that, it's not where where the party would want them to be. The party has to have the ability of helping, assisting the African working class to stand up to his own stature. His own stature. They need to see in the party, they need to see Lumumba. They need to see Malcolm X, not some person traipsing around pretending to be a worker who got nothing to do with the working class. They need to be seeing Fannie Lou Hamer and Ella Baker. Anybody ever met Ella Baker know that you ain't looking at somebody just traipsing around. In fact, they need to see in us something that takes us higher from where we are as opposed to descending someplace else. So that's what we say, that we can't confuse the party with the working class. That is to say that we are the workers itself. The fact is that the African People's Socialist Party is formed from the best sons and daughters of the colonized Black working class. At any given time, the mass of the Black working class may exist in a state of demoralization or a morass of social backwardness, of religious fatalism, drug-induced lethargy, or a number of ailments often associated with revolutionary defeat. We see that in the communities sometimes, don't we? We see that. But so you don't descend there. What we do is help to elevate the people to their full stature. That's what the party does. The party is the best expression. It's the advanced attachment of that working class. It is the ox upon which the masses must ride. Therefore, the party must consist of those Africans most dedicated to the revolutionary cause, and not just anyone who wishes to join. Otherwise, the party would dissolve into the masses and would not be able to fulfill its role as the vanguard that carries behind it the entire Black and working class. So the party is the conscious vanguard detachment of the colonized Black working class, which must know and be able to creatively apply African internationalism, the ever-developing historical materialist theory of the party. In addition to being the advanced detachment of the domestically colonized African working class, the party is also the organized detachment of the African working class in the struggle for political independence, African liberation, and socialism. Embodied within the party is the solidarity of the colonized African working class. Embodied in the party is a solidarity of the colonized African working class. The party constitutes the strong organization in which the party members are united in a single collective, and where every communist works under party control and bears individual responsibility for the affairs of the party. The significance of the party as the organized detachment of the Black working class is exemplified from this passage from one of the works by V.I. Lenin. Quote, "The party is the politically conscious advanced section of the class. It is its vanguard. The strength of that vanguard is 10 times, 100 times, more than 1,000 times greater than its numbers. Is that possible? Can the strength of hundreds be greater than the strength of thousands? It can be and is when the hundreds are organized. Organization increases strength tenfold. The politically consciousness of the advanced contingent is incidentally manifested in its ability to organize. By organizing, it achieves unity of will, unity of will, unity of will, and the united will of an advanced 1,000, 100,000, million becomes the will of the class," unquote. Yeah, you know that. I'm talking to people in the party. You already know that because you've seen what the party has done. We're a small party. We've in a small party, people marvel right here in St. Louis as an example. And I'm only using St. Louis as an example because we've done it and do it other places as well. But look at St. Louis as an example. Small party, but organized. And people are marveling all the time at, you did this in just this short amount of time. Because we're organized, we're able to pull all kinds of forces into the process to carry out the strategic aims of the revolution because we're organized. There are people in this study right now who are in South Africa, who are in West Africa, who are in Central Africa, who are in East Africa, who are in Europe and throughout the United States because we are organized. And that gives us a capacity and a strength that is 100 times, 1,000 times greater than the numbers of the party. Organization is critical. I mean, there's a fellow who become, quite significant, say all the time, and people quote, this is the great quote they have. He said, organize, organize, organize. Doesn't say organize what, but just organize, right? I'm saying that we organizing to take power. I'm saying that we build an organization that's informed by revolutionary theory. It has tactics and strategies that's associated with how we take power and remove ourselves from the clutches of the most beastly, cruel social system that has ever been existing on the planet Earth. That's what I'm saying. And so organization is critical. And I'm saying in order to do that, we need to have a group of people organized in a process whose commitment, whose dedication is to make that happen. That's what we live for. That's what we live for. Everybody ain't gonna be like that. We know it. We know it's difficult in some ways to take it on, but it's more difficult in our view. We've concluded that the greatest difficulty we are confronted with is living under this tyranny of colonial domination. White, nasty white
power that dominates Black people, has all these guns that can wake you up 5 o'clock in the morning, pre-dawn, slaughter you like they did Fred Hampton in 1969, and any other forces that they murder like they did Lumumba, and overthrow like they did in Nkrumah. They have the power now. They have the organization as well. Only thing we got is organization. We got theory. We got tactics and strategy. We know what this thing is made of, and so we can begin the process of deconstructing it. You can live in a house, and the house is on a bad foundation, and you can find yourself all the time dealing with the consequences of living in a house with a bad foundation. You might have leaks over here. You might have cracks in the wall over here. You might have these kinds of things. But the thing is that you just can't keep fixing leaks and the cracks in the house. You got to take the whole damn thing down and build anew. That's the thing that we have to have the capacity to do. But you got to recognize that first. Otherwise, you will spend all your time and your money fixing something that is fatally flawed. The whole essence of the thing is flawed. So organization and political consciousness, that's what we're talking about. We say we are the advanced detachment. We are the conscious vanguard detachment. And we say that we are organized. And organization and political consciousness go hand in hand. Political consciousness is revealed in the first place by individuals becoming part of organizations which have definite political aims and represent specific material interests. Generally speaking, the Black working class has been taught the value of organization and discipline by life in general, and by the actual conditions of life for the class. This is true despite the fact that at certain times, such as now, after the class has suffered a major defeat like the Black Revolution of the 60s, the class has to regain confidence in its own leadership and organization. The working class has become confident again. You've seen that happen too, where we are members of the party. We've seen the people so beaten down and whatever, have no confidence in our ability to do anything, but you do it. You are the advanced attachment. You set the example. You set the terms. You are the ones that they can look to and know what they can do because they see you. And as the party, that's what we have to do. The class has to regain confidence in its capacity to win. So we want victories, small victories if necessary, but victories, and we show the posture and the stamina and the integrity necessary to make it happen. So the domestically colonized African working class does not fear organization and discipline. Sometimes the petty bourgeoisie and us as leaders of the party fear this organization and discipline and don't require it of people who are coming into the party, but the class ain't afraid of organization and discipline, not the working class. There are things that happen to us every day as workers. The workers that requires the working class to be organized and disciplined. Prison, you gotta be disciplined, organized in the prison. The life that we live requires that. If you don't have that, and we are punished, if we are not organized and disciplined under them, people know the value of organization and discipline. The African working class know the value. And so we have to bring that organization and discipline to the class in its own lives. And it's not just forced on us like that. Africans have always organized to deal with the conditions we are confronted with, whether those are favorable conditions that allow for the development of fabulous civilizations that we brought onto this earth, or whether they are even on plantations in Congo, or plantations in the United States and other places. The organization, people have organized to deal with our circumstances. So we say the domestically colonized African working class does not fear organization and discipline. Its participation in our most successful organizations in modern times, the Universal Negro Improvement Associations, the Nation of Islam, and Black Panther Party clearly demonstrate this. The necessary unity and centralization of the party cannot exist without discipline. The necessary unity and centralization of the party cannot exist without discipline. I can't tell you how important discipline is, because if you don't have discipline, you also cannot have trust. It's hard to trust people if they are indisciplined, which means they will go off at any given moment to do what they want to do. Just as organization and political consciousness go hand in hand, so do organization and discipline go hand in hand. Hence, a basic organizational principle of our party is democratic centralism, which unites our party around a single center with single rules and a single discipline. Article 8 of the party's constitution from section 1 through 7, and this is 89, so it's not necessarily the same place in this constitution. We will run into that some. Establishes the legal basis for democratic centralism within our party. And the party's manual on organization gives this brief description of democratic centralism. Quote, democratic centralism is a system according to which, one, all leading committees of the party, from the unit bureaus up to the highest committees, are elected by the membership or delegates of the given party organization. Two, every elected party committee must report regularly on its availability, on its activity to its party organization. It must give account of the work. Three, the lower party committees and all party members of the given party organization have the duty of carrying out the decisions of the higher party committees and the central committee. In other words, decisions of the central committee and the higher party committees are binding upon the lower bodies. Four, party discipline is observed by the party members and party organization because only those who agree with the program of the African People's Socialist Party and the central committee can become members of the party. You know, people used to slander Marcus Garvey, and they would say things like these petty bourgeois forces who were contending with Garvey, NAACP and other forces, they would say things like, and not just the NAACP, there were others, some that call themselves socialists, etc. And they hated Garvey, and for a number of reasons. One of which is Garvey was trying to move Africans to a total liberation and then to take back Africa, our Africa, and you get accustomed to soda water and other kinds of things like that. It's hard to even imagine getting out of there. But they would say things like Garvey only could work with people who agreed with him. Or Garvey only, his thing was to have people around him who agreed with him. And I was, you think about that. Does that sound extraordinary to you? I mean, so what you do is you go find people who disagree with you to hang out with. You disagree with him, so bring him in. They disagree, bring them in. One, and the other thing that's so fallacious about the statement, none of them could claim like Garvey to have 11 million members and supporters. So you got 11 million people, Black people who agree with Garvey. It seems to me that you're on the outs, not Garvey. You understand? But so we're saying that people are disciplined because only those who agree with the program of the party and the central committee can become members. 5, the minority carries out the decisions of the majority, the subordination of the minority to the majority. Party questions are discussed by the members of the party and by party organization until such time as a decision is made by the party committee or organization. After a decision has been made by the leading committees, by the central committee of the party, or by the party's national congress, this decision must be unreservedly carried out, even if a minority of the party organization is in disagreement with it. 6, the party organizations, units, and regions have the full initiative, the right and duty to decide on local questions within the limits of the general policies and decisions of the party. You can be, like the old song, by the Isley Brothers, it's your thing. Do what you want to do, but you do it within the context of the determinations, the policies, the theory, the tactics and strategies of the party. And we want to see people move. It's dreadful to have to every time tell somebody to go do this and to go do that. we say, here's the strategy, here are the tactics, here is what it is that we stand for, here are the goals that we've established for ourselves, here are the resolutions that you participated in creating, do it. And here are the leaderships, here is the leadership structure of the party. The relationships between the party and the people and the concretization, the embodiment the relationship between the party and the people is the concretization, the embodiment of the relationship between the masses and the revolutionary process. In other words, it's the party that connects the masses to the revolutionary process. So this relationship the party has to the people, represents this. This is the concretization of that. Because there are a lot of people who are not going to become members of the party. But the party's contact with them gives them contact with the revolution. That's why we've even said with the organization that we created in the 1980s, that NPDUM is a revolutionary organization, though the people in NPDUM may not all be revolutionaries because they carry out the strategy of what? Of the Revolutionary Party. So they can come in for any number of reasons in NPDUM. We provide them the door to come into the revolutionary process through the party. In its anti-colonial socialist policy and activities, the party proceeds from the fact that the mass of Black working class are the real makers of history, the decisive forces of social development. The party's strength lies in its links with the masses. The Black working class's strength lies in the leadership of the party. Say it again. The party's strength lies in its links with the masses. The Black working class's strength lies in the leadership of the party. Hence, the support and confidence of the colonized African working class are valued more than anything by the party. Hence, the party constantly struggles to multiply and consolidate the links with non-party people and to acquire the confidence of the masses. That's why we were involved in building the St. Louis Black Community Convention at the time when we were attacked. This connection with the masses of the people and providing leadership to the masses of the people and solving problems, moving the struggle forward. This gives the people, whether they're members of the party or not, connection to the revolutionary project, revolutionary process. It's hard to break people out of that. Once they come to it, it's hard to break communities out of that. Once they get accustomed to it, this becomes the practice of the whole community, of the whole people. Hence, the party fights against any kind of sectarianism, which could isolate it from the people. And at the same time, against any attempt to dissolve the party in the mass of the people. So we don't put on coveralls and combat boots and all this other kind of stuff. And we don't, I've seen situations where people would hang out in clubs and things like that because they had to be with the masses. And, that even people I know who actually, did forms of drug because the masses do this. And there are people who we hear that you got to say Black Lives Matter because that's what the masses say. You got to support Obama because the masses say that. No, we don't dissolve the party into the masses. We provide the leadership. And sometimes you have to swim upstream. Sometimes the masses, if they don't understand that the direction they're going in is to the swamps, you have to get in front. And even if they're going to push you aside and push you into the swamp, you got to try to keep that from happening. That's what leadership is about. That's what the party is about. As the advanced detachment of the domestically colonized African working class within the United States prison of nations, the party is called upon to train and enlighten the masses. The party and all African internationals must constantly carry out ideological educational work among the toiling masses. The party must take into consideration their needs, and we must consult with them. Mao Zedong, the great Chinese revolutionary, once summed this process up in this manner, quote, "In all the practical work of our party, all correct leadership is necessarily from the masses to the masses. This means take the ideas of the masses, scattered and unsystematic ideas, and concentrate them through study, turn them into concentrated and systematic ideas. Then go to the masses and propagate and explain these ideas until the masses embrace them as their own. Hold fast to them and translate them into action and test the correctness of these ideas in such action. Then once again, concentrate ideas from the masses. And once again, go to the masses so that the masses, so that the ideas are persevered in and carried through, and so on, over and over again in an endless spiral, with the ideas becoming more correct, more vital, and richer each time. The party must constantly work to develop the initiative of the mass of non-party people and work with the people regularly in order to guarantee in every step that the party's links with the people are maintained, and in order to gauge how strong these links are at any given time. The strength of the party and its links with the masses of our people are dependent upon our implementation of inter-party democracy, criticism, and self-criticism. The whole of inter-party life is directed at drawing larger and larger sections of the party's membership into active party work. Active party work. The party constantly struggles to develop in every possible way the activity and initiative of African internationalists and their individual responsibility for the affairs of the party. Their individual responsibility for the affairs of the party. Every member of the party as an individual is responsible for the affairs of their party. What this means is that although our Central Committee and various other party leaders and organizations have their responsibilities to uphold in the party, individual members of the party are also responsible for the affairs of the party. In the past, some petty bourgeois forces have come into the party from the experience of the so-called party building movement of the 1970s. This was a period which followed the actual defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s. It saw the emergence of radical petty bourgeois of all nationalities in competition with each other for the loyalty of the masses of our then leaderless people who had no part in the theoretical dispute and whose material interests were not considered by the petty bourgeois intellectuals who were determined to lead us. And as the struggles between the petty bourgeois intellectuals were separate from the real material needs of the people, the disputes generally centered around purely theoretical questions. The petty bourgeois radicals would catch each other, making errors in formulating theories separate from revolutionary practice. This act of catching people making errors became a great sport among these radical petty bourgeois forces. It became more important than the revolutionary practice and a revolutionary program with the interests of the Black working class as its basis. The greatest revolutionaries in these circles were those who, using the written works of revolutionaries of other places and generally of other periods, caught the greatest number of theoretical errors made by other petty bourgeois radical intellectuals using the same written works. There's something, because you have these petty bourgeois forces who were supposed to be revolutionaries, and you knew they were revolutionaries because they read Marx and Lenin and Trotsky and all these other forces and Mao. And so they were the most revolutionaries of these were the ones who could catch the other ones making some error in expressing Mao or Lenin or some other thing like that. That was catching, they were catching. This process of catching errors was transferred into our party in the past by some of these intellectuals. This process would actually allow them to see an error being made and not assuming responsibility for correcting it themselves or for calling attention to it themselves. Their style was to catch the individual making the error, or indeed to catch the entire party leadership making an error, or to catch the party in error. Hence, catching was more important than the practical program of the party, and more important than the party's strategic objectives. And that's up. While this catching was the basis for determining leadership within the petty bourgeois radical circles, what catching obscured in the real world was the absence of individual responsibility for the revolutionary process. While catching may be appropriate for groups of petty bourgeois radicals and ersatz revolutionaries whose individualism marks the principle of revolutionary organization they claim to pursue, it is entirely out of place within the African People's Socialist Party, where the principle of criticism and self-criticism exists side by side with the principle of individual responsibility for the affairs of the party. We engage in criticism and self-criticism within the party in order to advance the interests of the revolution as expressed in the line, the program, and strategic objectives of the party. The party must face its weaknesses soberly. The party must criticize its shortcomings and mistakes in order to correct them. It is only by facing up to contradictions, errors, and shortcomings that they can be corrected. And that's something that really, needs to be understood. Because we make errors. But if we cover them up, then we'll continue to make errors and we'll build on the error as opposed to moving forward. We have to solve problems. Hence, criticism and self-criticism in the party are a method of correcting errors and calling attention to shortcomings, which might be detrimental to the party and to the realization of the party's program and strategic objectives. Unlike the petty bourgeois practice of catching, which is a practice of blame and avoiding blame that creates a fear of admitting mistakes openly and honestly, the party's principle of criticism and self-criticism is recognition that fear of admitting mistakes openly and honestly and a failure to correct them in time prevents the party from fulfilling our role as leaders, as the leader of the domestically colonized African working class and the toiling masses. Another firm African internationalist principle is ideological and organizational unity. This does not call for any kind of unity, ideological and organizational unity. The party is opposed to unity based on a reconciliation of opposing lines. The party's line is one which is based on a scientific appraisal of the requirements of the revolution at every period. It is a line which must withstand the test of practice and which the party as an organization, through its legitimate process and procedures, including the party Congress, has come to accept as the only correct line. Hence, the unity of the party is based on the party's line and not on a reconciliation of the party's line with some other line which may be imported into the party. The basic party line, the one which often reflects the general reality of the conditions of existence for African people within the U.S. I keep saying the U.S., but it's greater than that, as you know, comrades. The basic party line, the only one which reflects the general unity of the conditions of the existence for Africans, the line wherein a general description of the world and our place in it as domestically colonized subjects is to be found, appears in every issue of the party's journal, The Burning Spear. And I'm going to read that. But, you can find this line as the preamble to the party's constitution. And it reads thusly here, all our work is guided by our understanding that our struggle for national liberation within U.S. borders is an integral part of the whole African liberation movement. That the African liberation movement itself is a part of the great contest between the ever-emerging forces of international socialism and the dying but not yet dead forces of imperialism. That the particular character of the African liberation movement within the U.S. is a struggle against U.S. domestic colonialism. That the destruction of colonialism led by a conscious Black revolutionary socialist party will constitute the critical blow and the struggle for socialism within U.S. borders. And of course, this is the Achilles heel of the so-called white communists and white anti-imperialists and white socialists, the question of colonialism. You can't get to socialism without destroying colonialism. It's impossible. The whole foundation of what is recognized as capitalism, best referred to as colonial capitalism, rests upon the colonial domination of the peoples of the world. So this basic party line upon which we have expanded and elucidated to constitute 4 critical points of understanding comprises the party's worldview. Together with the party's 14-point working platform, the basic party line constitutes the African People's Socialist Party general party program. Hence, the general unity of the party is based on the party's basic party line, and our unity around specific questions is forged through application of our basic party line to specific points of the general party program as it is reflected in the particular issues and questions we are confronted with in life. Ours is a unity then that is based on consistent African internationalism. As the advanced attachment of the African working class colonized within current U.S. borders, as that section which pushes forward all others and which has over the great mass of the proletariat the advantage of clearly understanding the line of march, the conditions and the ultimate general result of the proletarian movement, the party must lead everything. This clearly challenges the liberal petty bourgeois idea that the various social, cultural, and youth organizations which exist in our communities or on the campus or in prison even are just simply organizations of the people which somehow stand outside history and have no class character or political significance in the struggle for national liberation and socialism. In the past, the party has itself on occasion succumbed to this liberal anti-revolutionary petty bourgeois stance within the national liberation movement. This has led to the party abdicating our responsibility to lead mass organizations that the party has built to deal with fundamental questions of strategic value to our struggle. In more than one instance, due to alarmist cries by the petty bourgeois, bourgeoisie, mostly African, but often multinational, who screamed indignation that the party had the foresight and practical ability to lead our movement forward, the party has retreated to the detriment of our revolution. While genuine revolutionaries would have been self-critical for their inability to lead around any of the questions and issues the party has retrieved from obscurity, while genuine revolutionaries would have given all their support to the party, these petty bourgeois forces joined with all the forces of reaction in a great din of anti-party fervor. And today, the party has come to terms with the fact that not only must we not be apologetic for leading, it is our absolute responsibility to lead. You know, I mean, this is 1986, and I think about the work that the party has done to build the Black is Back Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Reparation as one example. We did it not because, you know, we needed company or something like that. We did it not because we think that coalitions are the instrument through which political power can be won for the masses of our people. In fact, oftentimes coalitions obscure the class content of the struggle because it's open to all kinds of forces. We did it because it was absolutely necessary to bring the broadest kind of unity possible to the general anti-colonial struggle of African people, because the struggle of our people was incoherent. What I mean by that is you had somebody over here doing something, somebody over here doing something, and never was any connection, and never was a to what end any of this stuff was being done. There was no general line, what it is we were fighting for. This is one of my criticisms I used to make all the time. You know, there was a time when people fight for Black power, they fight for civil rights, et cetera. That was a certain kind of coherence that the overall movement had, but we had a place where there was no coherence at all. There's people just doing stuff in these different places, and sometimes they were real smart people doing real smart things, except they were individuals, and because it did not lend any coherence to the overall movement that brought masses of African people into some kind of general understanding of what it is that we were fighting for, and generally what it is that we were fighting against. So the coalition gave us this splendid opportunity to bring masses of people together, of different organizations together. And right now there's something like 17 members. There've been greater numbers at different times. And the thing is that we built a movement now that's organized around self-determination. That means any number of things to any number of people, but the self-determination, of course, is the anti-colonial movement. Party did that. And to give a general trajectory, and you can see the consequences of that. Anybody can see the consequences of that as part of the fronts that we've opened up in terms of lending coherence to the movement. But the point is that in this process, because we pulled it together, people came into the coalition, and because they could see the leadership that was coming from the coalition, but they fought in many instances tooth and nail against the leadership of the party. They didn't want the party to be the leadership. They wouldn't be there if the party hadn't brought them together. And etc. So I'm saying that this whole thing that we were talking about in 1986, about how forces who should have been doing everything they could to support the efforts that we were making were actually contending and fighting to undermine the efforts. And in so doing, they were uniting with the colonizers, with the colonialists. So we said, while genuine revolutionaries would have been self-critical for their inability to lead around any of the questions and issues the party had retrieved from obscurity. Who was talking about colonialism? Who was talking about it? And they came in and they became anti-colonialists as a part of the process. They came into this under the leadership of the party. That's why, this was a test for even some leaders of the party who would get tired of forces who were freeloaders, who would just come in and ride and take advantage of the relationship, but didn't contribute to it in that way, to the relationship. But they didn't contribute to the relationship that much, but they did contribute, independent perhaps of their separate from their will. They did contribute to our ability to give coherence to a broader force out there. So, you got some people who came in as anti-party forces who are now taking the anti-colonial struggle out there. We succeeded in contributing to the greater coherence. Some people who were just anti-racist and stuff like that, now, anti-colonial, they're better anti-colonialists than we are. Some people who were African Americans have just discovered that they could eradicate the hyphen, connecting them like a chain to America, and they wouldn't come to some kind of disastrous consequence of that. Party did that. And none of them ever said, you were right, which is okay, because we didn't do it for them to say we were right. We were doing it to build the revolutionary project. So today, the party has come to terms with the fact that not only must we not be apologetic for leading, it is our absolute responsibility to lead. The party must help the mass organizations, the community organizations, prison collectives, and campus groups to work out the correct political line and to properly direct their activities toward political independence, African liberation, and socialism. We're going to run into these organizations all the time. I said, the mass organization, campus groups, and this, the party has to be there. And everybody ain't gonna come into the party, that's all right, but we got to push them again in the whole anti-colonial trajectory that we're talking about, reparation, anti-colonial trajectory, all this stuff. That said, party has to do that. Our members need to be aware of that as well. This is the party's task because all the party's work prepares it best for this responsibility. And because the party is the most perfected and highest form of Black working class organization and the highest expression of the people's will to struggle. I'm not saying that the people don't have the will to struggle without the party, but it's the highest expression because it takes us to a different conclusion. It's a to what end? It's the highest expression. Within the ranks of the party are the most advanced, most conscious representatives of the colonized African population, the Black working class, and the toiling masses, the representatives upon whose shoulders rests the ultimate responsibility for raising up the revolutionary, scientifically guided consciousness of the Black working class. When we say that the ranks of the party are the most advanced, this doesn't mean that the ones who read the most Garvey or the most Malcolm, but their commitment, to step outside of the colonial construct and try to break down the colonial construct. Sometimes they might not even know that much of, can't articulate anything but Garvey or Nkrumah or Lumumba or Lenin or Marx or anything like that. But they represent the interests and fight for the interests as they understand it of the class. And they love the party and they unite with the party and they try to carry out the mission of the party. And they recognize that just like sometimes you get married before you fall in love, you can be in the party and work at it. It'll work for you. Why are you laughing like that, Comrade Rage? I see it. It is clear that the liberation of our people and the emancipation of our class cannot be won by just any kind of organization, right? The liberation of our people and the emancipation of our class cannot be won by just any kind of organization. It is even clearer that many existing organizations have absolutely no interest in making revolution, and that even some of the radical nationalist organizations are only willing to go just so far. And, like a real example of that was the Obama phenomenon. When the majority of the so-called Black nationalists, whose by definition presumes there's a presumption of they want to be a free nation, they want to liberate the nation, etc. Majority of these Black communists, they saw in Obama their own petty bourgeois aspirations. And it was like there, but by the something of God, go I. So they saw their children, and if not them, being able to be like Obama. So they were not involved in overturning and willing to be involved in overturning the system. They would only go so far. And so we saw that. Even people who we work with around reparations and things like that. The reparations issue is in the people. It's in the people. The reparations conclusion is in the people. If a government or corporations or anything like that gives an inch on the question of reparations, it would be due to the organization, to the demand coming from the people. It's our responsibility to organize the people, one. Two, there are all kinds of ways to get reparations, and that's going to be relying on the people, not just the government or corporations willingly giving it up. However, the role of political bureau, ask Mutula Shakur, however, the role of political leader can only be fulfilled by the party as the highest form of organization for national liberation and the emancipation of the Black working class. The role of the party as political leader requires the recognition of the absolutely hostile relationship that our people have to U.S. colonialism and the various forms of imperialist domination of Africans the world over, as well as to the irreconcilability of the class contradictions between world capitalism led by U.S. imperialism and the toiling masses of working peoples of the world. Political leadership is a science and an art. It is not something that one automatically has. It requires skill and the capacity to quickly choose and change forms of struggle. V.I. Lenin declared, quote, "We are," listen to this, "we are the party of a class, and therefore almost the entire class should act under the leadership of our party," unquote. This is Lenin. This is what Lenin had to say, collected works of Lenin. We are the leader, we are the party of a class, all parties are, and therefore almost the entire class should act under the leadership of our party. However, this is what we say, within the domestically colonized population of the US, the two main contending social forces are the Black working class within the population, with the Black working class comprising 88 to 94% of the population, and the primitive Black petty bourgeois, which, generally speaking, has an inordinate amount of influence presently due to the military defeat of the Black Revolution of the 60s. Its influence is also tied to one or another sector of the colonial white ruling class or the capitalist colonial state itself. That's the petty bourgeoisie that we're talking about. We've seen the influence they have. I mean, they are supported by the Paul McKees here, you know, like in St. Louis, by the government or any other kind of force that needs them to represent what they would characterize the interests of our people, which is not to overturn our relationship with the system. So these forces have an inordinate amount of influence. They can get, they're the ones with the connections. They're the ones who can do these kinds of things. So in the past, and to the point that, you know, when, like, do you remember we did in St. Louis, Missouri, when we first opened up the Black Power Blueprint, the farmers market, the police came out in their cars and what have you to intimidate the people who were coming to the market. He said, "Why are you here?" They said, "Well, the alderman told us to show up, that there was some kind of problem and what have you." They have this kind of relationship. They have an inordinate amount of influence because they're connected to the state or to the colonizers themselves. Anybody remember that, what I'm talking about? Yeah. So, and that happens everywhere. Everywhere. Remember this guy who was the head of the NAACP, who actually told us when we were demonstrating about the treatment of African people at one of the major tourist attractions in the city of St. Petersburg, Florida, how they were treating African people. Remember, we were demonstrating, he come and tell us that every time you demonstrate, he said, "I get a whole more money from the white folks." You understand? They have these connections. That's their jobs. That's their jobs. But once you become influential and effective, we've also seen in different spaces and times where Africans who have been assigned and even hired by the petty bourgeois or the state or instances have come to us to be as supportive as they can and open up kinds of doors to us. Because, as I said earlier, the petty bourgeoisie and the African working class at a particular time after the defeat of the revolution had lost confidence in the Black Revolution. But now the African People's Socialist Party provides confidence to the class, to the African petty bourgeoisie and to the African working class of a capacity. And they see this and they move in our direction. Some of them, not all of them. I mean, it's a tiny minority, but that's what we see. So in the past, when the political activity and ideology of the Black petty bourgeoisie was generalized as an anti-colonial struggle for democratic rights, the Black petty bourgeoisie constituted a progressive influence within our movement, all right? However, with the victory of the struggle for democratic rights, which came as a concession to the Black petty bourgeoisie, and at the expense of the Black Revolution of the 60s, the petty bourgeoisie realized its fundamental political aims and lost any historically derived progressive character it once had. Is that clear? They used to be, at a particular time, they had a progressive character. When they were trying to stop lynchings, when they were doing other kinds of things that made accessible things that the African working class couldn't get ordinarily, when they were even changing laws or fighting for that, they were doing that in their own interest. But their interest, from their perspective, every class is this way except the African working class, which has not yet come to that conclusion, will speak for in the interest of the class as if they're speaking for the whole people. When you see the Black petty bourgeoisie, when Obama says something about Black people, he ain't talking about, well, we in the Black petty bourgeoisie believe this and that. He said Black people believe this. When the guy who was the alderperson here in St. Louis, who they just arrested for his relationship, for his opposition to us in relationship to the big time developers, when he made a statement, he didn't say this is for the petty bourgeoisie. He said this is what Black people want, right? And the African working class is also going to have that ability, because it is we who are the majority, not they. So anyway, the African petty bourgeoisie, when it had won certain things during the struggle for democracy in the 1950s and early 60s, they had achieved their fundamental political aim. Now you can vote, but if you vote wrong, we'll send the FBI at your house at 5 o'clock in the morning. You know, you can say what you want to say wrong thing. If we don't beat you up on the highway like we did, what's his name, in Los Angeles, we'll send the FBI to your house. We come up with all these kinds of things that you've just done in order to take that away from it. So, but the petty bourgeoisie ain't gonna do none of those things anyway. African petty bourgeoisie is not gonna run the kind of campaigns that we did electorally to end the colonial domination of Black community control of police. They ain't gonna do that. The African, generally speaking, they won't do it until we build a fire on the masses of African workers who won't settle for anything less than that. Then you can see them moving in that direction. African working class, petty bourgeoisie, how long was the petty bourgeoisie talking about reparations? They're not the ones who say, let's put it on the ballot to the masses of African working people. They're not the ones who had demonstrations requiring reparations. So they were moved in a way, then they outlasted their own progressive character, and the concessions were made to the petty bourgeoisie by the colonizer at the expense of our struggle. When did for example, even the right to vote, and this is really important, to participate in elections in this country, because people hold us up as a great day, 1965 Voting Rights Act was passed and what have you. But what they miss out on is that was also the year they killed Malcolm. That was just 4 years before they killed Fred Hampton. That was 3 years before they killed Martin Luther King. They were destroying the revolutionary movement so that now you got the right to vote, but you ain't got nobody to vote for. And you ain't got no program. So the petty bourgeoisie won it. You didn't see the petty bourgeoisie running out there saying y'all took away the pamphlet program. You didn't see the Black petty bourgeoisie saying y'all took away the right of African people to actually make demands beyond what we are offering. So they had outlived any progressive character that they have. And right now, it's really interesting because the African National Congress is one of the petty bourgeois forces that leads the government in South Africa. I was talking to a comrade some years ago, and who said that, first of all bourgeoisie in the world helped the African National Congress come to power. All of them, everywhere. United States, Clinton actually sent organizers and things like that to help them win an election. Comrade said that God couldn't have won an election against the ANC. So powerful was all the colonizers, helping them. And they recognized that you can have, and the ANC has achieved what it wanted. Look at, they going to jail. They act like they're in North St. Louis, except they get a lot more money than the Africans in North St. Louis who corrupt and being paid off. They got what they wanted. The masses of people in occupied Azalea, South Africa, still living in shanties and whatever. And I've been there and know what it looks like. Here, this rich continent, et cetera, where they're petty bourgeoisie because they got what they wanted. They got it. But when did they give Africans, even in Africa, the right to participate in the electoral process? The thing that really kicked it off and made it absolutely necessary for them was Mau Mau in Kenya in the 50s. And England saw that it was going to have to give up something because the Africans were taking it otherwise. So to keep Africans from taking it, they made concessions to the petty bourgeoisie at the expense of the masses of African people in Africa, in St. Louis, and other places around the world. Anyway, so the victory of the struggle for democratic rights, which came as a concession to the Black petty bourgeoisie, and at the expense of the Black Revolution of the 60s, the Black petty bourgeoisie realized its fundamental political aim and lost any historically derived progressive character it once had. The petty bourgeoisie did. In South Africa, the petty bourgeoisie did. The same thing is true in St. Louis and throughout the United States and others. The petty bourgeoisie lost any historically derived progressive character that it had. Thus, going back to Lenin's quote before, that the party, according to Lenin, since we are the part of a class, then somehow we have to lead almost the entire working class. We say, thus, because of what has happened with the African, because we are colonizing, what has happened here, that the mantle of leadership, both for the struggle for national liberation and socialism, has fallen upon the shoulders of the most despised and feared Black working class. Therefore, as the advanced attachment of the Black working class to African People's Socialist Party assumes the leadership, not only for almost the entire class, but also for almost the entire people. Therefore, we resist any efforts to reduce, and the petty bourgeoisie will recruit you to be a part of a neo-colonial apparatus, especially the more successful you are. We've seen that. They come courting you. Won't you join us? Come to this meeting, come do this and that. They want to bring you in. Because when you contest with the colonizer, you're also making a contest with the petty bourgeoisie, who relies on the colonizer. Remember, Malcolm X used to talk about how the house Negroes and the field Negroes, and how the house Negroes always try to protect the interests of the master. Well, the thing is, it wasn't just some backward stance on them, some abstract question that the house Negro was dealing with, because the fact is that whose house did the house Negro live in? The master's house. If the master's house burned down, the house Negro's house was burning down. If the master was in trouble, the house Negro was in trouble. That's why they would come and wear at you and bring you into their process, because you protect them. You see? So, therefore, we resist any effort to reduce the activity of the party to that of a passive recorder of spontaneously developing events in the manner of some so-called revolutionary organizations whose theory or program does not require intervention in the practical struggles of life. Our entire mission and the basis of our existence is to become actively involved in life. Our task is to mold the consciousness of the working class and all the toiling masses, and to permanently lead the revolutionary struggle of the masses for political independence, African liberation, and socialism. I want to see where we are now. Comrade Director Keeley, help me.
Chairman, I was I was going to try to have us stop on page 28, just before
Okay,
the
So I should
photo of
proceed.
Alvalita. Yes.
okay. So the 5 fundamental principles of party leadership are: 1, democratic centralism as an organizational principle of party building and practical activity. 2, collective leadership as the highest principle of party leadership. 3, selection of cadre and verification of task fulfillment as the main content of party's organizational work. This is really important, selection of cadre, but also verification. This is where some forces get problems, because you always check it up. Verification of task fulfillment as the main content of party's organizational work. Selection of cadre and verification of task fulfillment. 4, the unity of theory and practice and of organizational and ideological work. Organizational and ideological work. And 5, party leadership of the mass organizations of the colonized and working people. Those are the 5 fundamental principles of party leadership. African internationalist standards of party life are embodied in the party's constitution and the general party program. These are the most important documents of the party. The general party program consists of the basic party line and the 14-point working platform. The general party program is supplemented and reinforced by other documents, such as the political report and main resolutions at party congresses. The general party program provides a scientific basis for the main task and aims of the party and is the foundation of ideological unity. The party constitution defines the organizational principles of party building, standards of inter-party life, forms and methods of practical activity, and is the foundation of organizational unity. The party constitution states what the party is, what its tasks are, who can enter the party, and how, obligations and rights of party members, structures of the party, etc. The title of party membership of African internationalists is a title of honor. The purity of the party's ranks must become a law of the party, even as we are in the process of building and consolidating the party. Every African internationalist, every communist must live up to and bear with dignity the title of party membership. In the recent past, we have seen a lackadaisical attitude in some party members toward their membership. Not only has this attitude been reflected in such practical matters as an unwillingness or hesitancy in paying party dues and meeting other practical organizational obligations of membership, but there has also been a generally slovenly attitude toward party membership, which is often reflected in a general refusal to live up to the high principles of African internationalism and party membership. This contradiction within the party led us to declare in July of 1983, the party must purge its membership rolls of all party members who prove unable or unwilling to exist and function as members in good standings as determined by the party's constitution, rules of party discipline, and the organizational manual of the African People's Socialist Party. Raising the significance of the title of party membership, members is connected with 1, correct selection of new party members, 2, increasing the responsibility of party members and strengthening party discipline, 3, drawing all African internationalists into active day-to-day party work and organizing inter-party life so that it allows for initiative by party members. The question of membership is the fundamental question of party building. The party's composition largely determines which policy the party pursues, the manner in which the party is organized, the methods we employ to achieve our aims and to solve the problems that arise. This is a really important statement that's being made here. Because if you don't have quality members, then you're restricted in what the hell you can do. of what you can call for. And we've paid a price at different times, even recently, for this. You know, like holding party members to the standards. And we're not talking about some ridiculously, complicated standards. But we're talking about, anyway. The party can successfully fulfill its role as party leader only if it takes into its ranks none but the most advanced, conscientious, energetic representatives of the working class, whether they are workers or whether they are revolutionized, petty bourgeois intelligentsia, etc. Only those, did I achieve where you wanted me to be, comment, Director?
Yes, Uhuru, Chairman, I think this is a good place to stop. Uhuru, not that I want to stop you, but I think this just gives us a clean cutoff. And just, want to appreciate, you going into part 2 of Build and Consolidate. And I just think that, again, we have to remind, everyone when this was produced, 1986, and how relevant this presentation is, this document is to, understanding the period that we're in today and what it is that the party must do in this moment. I think that, just the task is abundantly clear for the party in this critical moment. And so we have, just a couple more minutes left. We will take a couple of questions. So if you have not already put your question into the chat section, please do so. But before we do that, I want to take a look at some of our movement announcements so people can know what's going on. All right. First, join the counteroffensive to stop the FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African Liberation Struggle. Donate or volunteer to the Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa Defense Campaign today. And for more information, go to handsoffuhuru.org to volunteer, donate, or sign the petition. And join the next monthly Hands Off Uhuru, Hands Off Africa mass meeting on Monday, January 9th at 6 p.m. Central Time. The theme of this mass meeting is Meet the 4 Unindicted Co-Conspirators. Learn what you can do to support this fight back against the July 29th FBI attacks on the African People's Socialist Party and the African Liberation Movement. You must register to attend. Please go to tinyurl.com/handsoff meeting. And you can also scan that QR code and save the date. On Saturday, January 21st at 4 p.m. Central Time, the Hands Off Uhuru Defense Campaign will host an event titled Build the Anti-Colonial Defense, Stop the Attacks on African, Puerto Rican, Indigenous Mexican, Palestinian, and all liberation struggles. Go to handsoffahuru.org/events for updates and registration. The Burning Spear newspaper is celebrating 54 years in print. We want to remind everyone that you can view past issues of The Burning Spear going all the way back to the beginning issue by going to theburningspear.com/archive. And we encourage everyone to subscribe to The Spear, 12 issues delivered to your door or email inbox or both. You can also gift a subscription to family and friends and support the Mafundi Lake sponsor a prisoner subscription program by sponsoring one or more prisoner subscriptions. Go right now to theburningspear.com/subscribe. On Wednesday, December 28th at 6 p.m. Central Time, join the African People's Solidarity Committee for a special web event recognizing comrades past and present who stand in solidarity with the African Liberation Movement, working under the leadership of the African People's Socialist Party for reparations. Register to join the Zoom room at tinyurl.com/salute-our-comrades. And join the African People's Solidarity Committee on Sunday, January 1st, New Year's Day, 2023, for an important national conference to build the movement for white solidarity with Black power, featuring Chairman Omali Yeshitela as the keynote speaker, calling on white people watching today to reserve your spot in this important conference. There is no cost to register. You can go to tinyurl.com/APSC2023. And make sure you like and subscribe to the Burning Spear TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study, and support the Omali Taught Me show by donating now at paypal.me/Omali Taught Me. Uhuru Tours and Speakers Bureau is an institution of the African People's Socialist Party that coordinates events and tours for Chairman Omali Yeshitela and other party speakers and leaders. Book Chairman Omali and other Uhuru movement speakers for your campus or organization now. And please do so because 2023 is already filling up. You can email info@uhurutours.com or call 727-914-3621. And to keep up with all of the events in the Uhuru movement, go to theburningspear.com/events to see our calendar. And lastly, Chairman Omali Yeshitela raised a great question at the beginning of this study, where calling on people to join the African People's Socialist Party, that if you are not a member of the African People's Socialist Party, this is the time where you have to answer why. And if you cannot be a member of the African People's Socialist Party, you have to be a supporter of the African People's Socialist Party, the only vehicle capable of making the African Revolution and destroying the colonial capitalist system. So go to apspuhuru.org, get off the sidelines, join the African Revolution today. Go to apspuhuru.org, no matter where it is you're located in the world, we are organizing, we are building right there. So visit apspuhuru.org and fill out that contact form today. So that will conclude our announcement section, and we're going to go into the Q&A. And Chairman, this first question has come from Comrade Diop. Before I get to Comrade Diop's question, I also want to recognize Comrade Nasha, who did give a donation today. So thank you, Comrade Nasha, for your donation to our study. And Comrade Diop's question was, Uhuru Chairman, is it possible for an African capitalism to exist on liberated African soil? That is to say, after white colonial capitalist domination is overturned, is it possible for the indigenous African petty bourgeoisie to become the new capitalist rulers of an independent Africa? And what could ensure that this does not occur?
Uhuru, different people have raised that question different times and in different ways, Comrade Diop, and some really raise it in a way that really desire us to be able to say that, there can be this black capitalism and somehow the black capitalism will be all right. And some of them are part of this whole notion that capitalism is all right, it's just in the wrong hands but capitalism is not a desirable outcome, and an actual victory of the African Revolution will destroy the ability of capitalism to exist. The fact is that the destruction of colonialism, the colonial mode of production, makes capitalism impossible because it rests upon the foundation of colonial domination of African people. So what has to happen is that we have to have and build, work for, become more effective as a revolutionary party of the African working class, a global party of the African working class, so that every place in the world where African people exist, there is organization of revolutionary forces, professional revolutionaries, to take and wield political power connected to a single center, similar to what Marcus Garvey had attempted to do and what we will accomplish moving forward. So capitalism must die. There is no credibility for Black capitalism, African capitalism. Capitalism is capitalism. It can only exist through sucking the resources of labor that is produced by other people and on lands, resources that are extracted from other people. It has exploitation by definition. Capitalism is exploited by definition. And so African capitalism is something that we find totally unacceptable as an idea, and that we will have to, that's why the working class must actually have a complete revolution. And that's why, and find that this existence of any existence of a so-called African capitalism would have to be fought, and the power. Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman, thank you for this response, and Comrade Diop for the question. And, I just think that it's really important. The leadership of the African working class has been expressed and emphasized so much throughout, certainly this document, Build and Consolidate, and just the understanding of the African People's Socialist Party representing, being the advanced attachment of the African working class, and the fact that, any form of this parasitic social system cannot exist. It's not in the interest of the African working class, and certainly of all of humanity, which we, can see being the case unfolding throughout the world. So just want to appreciate that question. There also—
There's 4 feet here too, comment. I don't know if you can see her.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry,
okay.
no, I can't. Comrade Fofi, you said in St. Louis, has a question?
Yes, come on up. I think you're speaking here, Fritz.
Chairman, can you expound on what that catching process was meant to do and how it became such a phenomenon during that time?
Yeah. With the defeat of the Black Revolution, military defeat of the Black Revolution of the 1960s, we saw like all kind of petty bourgeois and radical petty bourgeois forces who were very impressed with themselves. And they would come into the movement, and they read all the books. They read Marx and Lenin and and Mao and all these books. And so what they would do is that the organization we had tied up all the time in these arguments and debates based on the fact that somebody said this wrong. But what really meant, Lenin really meant, or what Mao really meant, and what Stalin said, and Trotsky, et cetera, so that this became the essence of what it was about. So catching. And this catching had, actual material and concrete, manifestations, so that people would see work being done or see what was happening that was an error in the work, and they wouldn't take responsibility of trying to fix it. In fact, they were looking forward for it going wrong so they can catch you making an error, as opposed to saying, hey, let's, comrade, we can fix that. Let's do this. I think it's better, et cetera, et cetera. So this catching became more important than the actual accomplishing, like the revolution and task that we involved in. Was that helpful, Fofi?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
Uhuru, Chairman. Thank you, Comrade Fofi. I appreciate that question, because it was certainly, something I was definitely like having my ear to when we were going through that section. And I just think that's, so important, because we see that definitely today too. I mean, you have all these brilliant people out there who are, in the process of engage in these debates that go nowhere. And then nobody has a solution for what it is that they're even talking about. And nobody assumes responsibility for the solution. So, anyway, I really appreciate that. And it just makes all that other stuff meaningless. Also want to shout out Comrade username Syrup C in YouTube, who also
what's the name?
Syrup C, like maple syrup C.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And the comment that Comrade Syrup C wrote says, "Thank you. I'm South Asian myself, but solidarity, African liberation should be our first priority in the struggle globally." So Uhuru, Comrade, and again, they also gave a donation to the study. So want to appreciate you participating. And Chairman, so we have about 5 minutes to close, and I wanted to just give you an opportunity to give us some closing remarks, and want to again just appreciate your leadership and diving into this document. Also, there are a couple of questions in the chat regarding whether or not we will do another part for this study. And the answer is yes. In mid-January, we'll be doing part 3. We have a couple of other events that will be happening before then, but hold on to this document. There will be a part 3 to this study. So Chairman, with that being said, I would like to turn it over to you for our closing remarks.
Uhuru, thank you, Comrade Director. And I wanted to say that as I initiated this study, commenting that we are talking about party building because we think it's the fundamental question today, and that we have to concentrate on that. And every living, breathing African and every freedom-loving people in the world needs to be contributing to building and consolidating the African People's Socialist Party that's been working for 50 years, not to hold a better demonstration, but to actually change the world. And critical to changing the world is the total liberation and unification of Africa and African people globally. This is the foundation of the entire social system. And people, when I first came to St. Louis, after the murder of Mike Brown, where there were hundreds and sometimes thousands of people demonstrating, the real question that I had to ask then, to what end, to what end, to what end? And we were excited about St. Louis because we saw for the first time in a very long time masses of people who not in the streets on Canfield Drive, I mentioned in particular, but they were able to do it despite the efforts of petty bourgeois leaders who were parachuted into St. Louis by the ruling class, the Jesse Jackson, Al Sharptons, and all these other hustlers. And I'm naming them because they were just high profile charlatans. But the reality is that there were more sellouts in St. Louis, Ferguson during this time per square inch than any place that you could find in the world. But it was the masses held the line and long enough for it to become a contagion. It was a turning point in the struggle of our people. And now we are confronted again with the fact is that we have to go beyond protest. We have to have a revolutionary organization that can actually take and wield the political power. It has to be deeply embedded in the masses of people, and that's a struggle. It's not an easy thing to do, but that's what we've been committed to for 50 years, and we are saying that you need to come on. If you're not members of the party, you need to come on, join the party. And if you're unsuccessful in getting in the door the first time, try it again, because we make errors too. And so every instance where we don't respond may not be because there's something wrong with you. It may be an error on our part, but you have this responsibility. And if you can't get in, then you have to support the African People's Socialist Party so that we can win the liberation and destroy this bloody, vicious system that requires African people to live on our bellies, kissing the feet of white power forever. So I want to thank you so much, and I look forward to seeing you at our next study. And also there are other things that's been announced that we have to participate in as well. So Uhuru, ease, Weletu Africa, vanguard up, relentless, Uhuru.
Uhuru, Chairman, Uhuru. Want to again salute you and your leadership and this just profound discussion that we've been able to have today. I do want to let people know that our next Omali Taught Me Sunday study will be January 8th in 2023. And it is a special treat as the African People's Socialist Party will be taking that time to do a year in review. It will be longer than our normal time. So please anticipate being a part of a much larger event come January 8th during the time of our Omali Taught Me show. So I just want people to jot that down in your calendars as well. And also want to just salute and appreciate the Omali Taught Me show team, all of behind the scenes forces from the promotions, the curriculum development, the AV and the chat moderation, and all of you for tuning in today. I forgot to acknowledge where people are watching from. So just shout out Battle Creek, Michigan, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Portland, Oregon, Boston, Massachusetts, Fort Myers, Florida, St. Louis, Missouri, Huntsville, Alabama, San Diego, California, Chicago, Illinois, occupied Tanzania or South Africa, Oakland, California, Grenada, West Indies, Iowa, Greenville, South Carolina, Largo, Florida, Frederick, Maryland, Marion County, Georgia, Cleveland, Ohio, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Seattle, Washington, Montreal, Canada, Fresno, California, and Germany. So Uhuru Comrade, thank you for tuning in. And again, salute the profound leadership of Chairman Omali Yeshitela. Make sure you follow the chairman on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and now Twitch, and subscribe to the Burning Spur TV on YouTube to catch every episode of the Omali Taught Me Sunday Study. Uhuru, comrades.